It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday, and apologies in advance. I am super tired and super punchy. I am going to do my best to be coherent with this. Strap in, hang on to your butts, no promises. I don't know what's going to happen here. If you like Punchy Leanna, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. I swear to deity of your choice, this last week has felt like a month. I talked to the patrons about some of it, more personal stuff. But this last week, I cannot believe it's only been a week since the last Feedback Friday. Because last Feedback Friday, the shit show that was E3 had already started. Oh my God. Was that a sucking vortex of bullshit? Now, we have some tangible and intangible, like qualitative and qualitative metrics of just what a shit show it was. Just what a disaster it was. And I like data. So I'm going to share this with you guys. I don't know what the metrics are, like the measurement tools on some of this. I don't know how they came up with this, these numbers, but, Stream Hatchet. Hey, why aren't you? Oh, okay. Remember I said, Stream Hatchet crunched the numbers. Apparently, the Nintendo conference, the Nintendo Direct was the highest viewed across Twitch and YouTube gaming, at 3.1 million views. Now, Twitch gaming did not run the Nintendo presentation, so that's depressed. So the gulf between Nintendo and Xbox probably would have been higher if Twitch gaming ran it. I guess people watched it on co-streams like mine, but they were only partial co-streams because it's like, can we stream this? Can we not? What the hell, Nintendo? But then Xbox was number 2 at 2.3. And I don't think anybody is surprised that Nintendo and Xbox are the number 1 and the number 2 because, they're multiple publishers and their console, they're console manufacturers. They're not just a game publisher. And then, Ubisoft was the highest voted game publisher, but big drop. And then Square Enix, good for Devolver with 1.1 million. I mean, that 1.1 million for Devolver is more impressive than the 2.3 million for Xbox for me. Devolver's got to be happy with that number. These are fairly low for the big companies, though. Now, I think Ubi may have cannibalized itself some because of that Far Cry 6 presentation last week. So people are like, hey, I've seen that. But when you think about how many people play games, when you think about how many people own consoles, when you think about how many gamers there are out there around the world, these are pretty low numbers. That's an indication of the lack of impact that E3 had. Now, there's a multiplier effect, right? Because they pissed off streamers. And that means that they're not getting the benefit of goodwill of streamers like me, who will then go and, they call it influencers because influence audiences to be kinder, to sort of shape it, whatever. No, that pissed everybody off. And everyone's like, fuck you. It was confusing and a mess and disorganized. Fuck you. Bad. No good. The other qualitative element that just shows how little impact, what a whimper instead of a bomb E3 was this year, was the lack of a solid running culture war story coming out of E3 at the usual suspects at Kotaku and Polygon and all that. They had to piggyback off of the stupid Harley Quinn cartoon Batman can't go down on Catwoman scandal that I refuse to talk about because I think it's a publicity stunt. It's just dumb. And the Five Nights at Freddy creator political donations and retiring story. Multiple news cycles on the Five Nights at Freddy guy. That just shows there wasn't a ton coming out of E3. Right. more on the Five Nights at Freddy thing in a bit. I think it's worth talking about, unlike the fucking Batman thing, which fuck that. But I started thinking in response to the E3 thing, and in the comments in Feedback Friday were like people debating what was the absolute low moment for E3. And, you know, some people said, it's funny that nobody missed EA. People like, oh, Sony didn't come. There's a lot of talk about Sony not coming. Nobody seemed to give a shit that EA was also persona non grata, which I found really interesting. Like, it just shows how despised EA is, right? But some people were like, nah, Sony not being there, that was a low point. They should have showed up. At least everybody else tried. Some people said the, you know, Bandai Namco non-presentation was the low point. But it really seemed that the greatest holy shit, what was that, was devoted to the Take-Two diversity and inclusion panel. And I admit I didn't even bother watching that because I thought it was going to be a shit show and I didn't need to get angry. It's not game content. Therefore, burr. But Take-Two, the publisher of Grand Theft Auto, doing a diversity and inclusion panel, it's just off brand. You know, like, nobody required them to do that. What is that about? Huh? I don't even have words, and I'm yawning. See, the boredom has made me sleepy. So that aside, the low point. Question is, did Nintendo win E3? And it's just like Xbox and Nintendo fans battling back and forth, insisting that Xbox won, Nintendo won. I don't know that anybody won. I don't know that anybody won this year. Because Nintendo fucked up really hard with that streaming thing, right? Nintendo didn't lose. Xbox didn't lose. I don't think anybody really won. I don't think E3 had the cultural impact this year for anybody to get any real return on the investments. Now, okay, they're lucky they're not paying for expensive booths. They're just submitting tapes, right? But I'm sure they still had to pay to submit those tapes to the official like E3 stream. And I can't see anybody. You know, maybe Ubi will get it. Will get its money's worth because that Rabbids Mario game, which leaked, but still, it looks legitimately funny. I started thinking about the last time E3 was really fun. I had any fun at all at E3. And E3's never a show you can claim is actually fun to go to as media. It's miserable. It's hot. The food options are not great, except at the Sony press conference. They have food trucks out. It's pretty awesome. But you know, you're treated like garbage, looked down at, unless you're like with a really big company. You know, even when I was with The Escapist, I was treated okay, but not great, because I know you're the Canadian one. Back of the line. But the last time I really had any sort of fun at E3 was the last year they had Booth Babes. I don't know if that's correlation or causation, but it was that long ago. And I do think the mindset of playing to not lose instead of taking some risks and playing to win is something they got to shake off. I do think places like people that bother to be funny, like I said, Devolver, that's a really good return for Devolver. They're small and they publish small games, so, you know, good for them. And the Outer Worlds 2 trailer, probably like people like, yeah, okay, that's funny. But I don't know if E3 will ever really be relevant again. I think we'll see how PAX does this year. Like PAX might just become the the North American game show. E3 might have just become too corporate, and they're too interested in maximizing profits and not interested enough in making a product anybody actually benefits from. So let me pivot to that Five Nights at Freddy's story now, because like I said, I think there is something worth talking about in this. For people that don't know, the Five Nights at Freddy's creator, Open Secrets, published his political donations. Now, I guess you can search it by name. And Scott Cawthon, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's, has a lengthy record of donations to mostly Republican politicians. I mean, $5, does that really matter? But it's weird. He's in Texas. This might be a different guy here, because it's a different address, but this is all like the same dude from Texas, calls himself a game designer, and he's thrown a lot of bank at Republican politicians, right? Ben Carson, National Republican Senatorial Committee, Devin Nunes, Joe Collins, Mitch McConnell, Cory Gardner, David Valadao, Tommy Tuberville. I'm surprised more people did not make a big deal about Tommy Tuberville. Kevin McCarthy, Win Red, Bill Cassidy, Donald Trump. Everybody's like, oh my God, you gave money to Trump. How dare you? And the lone Democrat is Tulsi Gabbard, which people are saying, well, that's because she's a transphobe. I'm seeing a through line here. I didn't actually know that about Tulsi Gabbard, so maybe he didn't. I have no idea. Like John Cornyn and so on and so forth. It seems like the big names that people are picking on is Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, and Tulsi Gabbard. And then a few days later, this broke over the first weekend of E3. And then on, was it Monday? Today. Oh, sorry, Thursday. It broke that he's retiring. Not because of the uproar, it doesn't seem. Just, he's like, I want to do other things. I miss just being a person. And that's fair. I really don't think that... I never find conservatives are terribly unhappy when people find out they're conservative. Like, somebody who wants to keep their political affiliation secret doesn't give to that many conservative politicians. The question is his donation record relevant if he's not making openly political statements in his games? And Five Nights at Freddy's, obviously, is not. Now, there's a world of difference between going, I don't like something about this person, something about them puts me off, so I'm not going to buy their game. But with your wallets, that's cool. There's a big leap between that and sending them active nastiness on Twitter, right? Basically, Kotaku, in the case of the article that they wrote, seems to be suggesting that it's good, it's fine that people harassed Scott Cawthon because he has the wrong politics. This doesn't sit right with me, right? Because, I mean, the people that are going, oh, this is so bad, he gave money to Republican politicians and Tulsi Gabbard, who sponsored, an anti-trans and sport bill. And this is where we have to think really critically about our knee-jerk reactions to things. This, yeah, get him! Impulse when people have different political views than you, right? Because it's the tactics, right? If you're allowed to go, yeah, get him, when you've othered someone, then yeah, get him is an appropriate response when other people don't like something you have done. You have to be prepared to take what you dish out in that regard. And my big issue with these anti-trans kids in sports legislation is that the rationale behind it is there's an unfair advantage and there are college scholarships on the line. They're not even daring to suggest that a pro career in women's sports, although in tennis you can do it, right? But these are team sports. But scholarship, okay, so don't make them, if you're really concerned about the scholarships, just make them ineligible for scholarships. Let them play on the teams. Just make them ineligible for scholarships. If that's what you're really concerned about, if it's really that, make sure women have equal advantage in sports. And then, of course, then they say, but they're taking up a spot on the team. But so what? Like, you're cutting the least good player. It's what I kind of get the school scholarship opportunity to go to college thing. When there's a financial incentive, I see the logic of, well, someone may pretend to be trans to get a college scholarship. And I'm like, that's a hell of a commitment to avoid student debt. But, all right, I'll give them that. But the problem is, when you say just don't give them the scholarships, but then they're taking place on the team. So what? You're bumping a less good player. Period. End of story. Well, then competitions. It's a team sport. One player, really? It just, one thing eventually is just, I don't like it. These anti-trans bills, these anti-trans women in sports bills are a form of shunning. They are a way of people in power excluding people that they hate and fear. It is a way of invalidating trans women and reminding them through social structures that these people do not believe that trans women are women. I patently, categorically disagree with this. I think a lot of trans athletes would recognize, okay, there's some there's some work that needs to be done here. Okay, not getting a scholarship that maybe you're good enough for kind of sucks, but at least you're being given the opportunity to show that, you don't have some preternatural advantage. Like, I think a lot of people would be okay with the trade-off if they're allowed to play. Not everybody, but I can't even get that from these people that are opposed to trans women in women's sports. That is shunning. That is othering someone and deciding to unperson them and marginalize them in society and, get them out of my face everywhere I can. Ditto for people in power in various school boards that are banning critical race theory. It is a dog whistle in a lot of ways, because there's stuff they're banning as critical race theory isn't actually critical race theory. You don't teach critical race theory in public school. It's just too esoteric and circular and postmodern. Like, you don't. What they're banning is history. Just history they don't like. It's the powerful excluding things they don't like. Move over to games. It's still the powerful excluding things they don't like and people they don't like. It's just for the other team, right? It's leftists having more power in microcosm than right-wing people. But it's the same impulse, right? It's the same thinking. We have the power. We can keep these icky people away. And so they do it. So how can you really get mad when the other side, because they're wrong? Well, that's subjective, right? Inclusion, the inclusion part of the diversity of inclusion is that you have to cast a wide net. And so you have to let people in with ideas you don't agree with ideas that you actually might find threatening. Am I thrilled about people who declare a pro-life stance? Not especially. It makes me profoundly uncomfortable when other people think they have any say in women's health decisions. That I believe very strongly that that's a personal decision, And you deny people the right to make that moral choice for themselves if you ban the choice. If it's just, no, you can't do it, abortion's illegal. Well, you're not allowing a woman to practice her faith and be actively pro-life. You're doing it for her. That's paternalistic. I don't agree. Similar with, I am dead set against this. I think I made it clear. The banning of trans women in women's sports. I let middle school kids play in the way they're most comfortable. Holy shit. Would I shun a person in person because they had a different view from me? No, because I've seen the statistics on public opinion on trans women in sports, and I'm in the minority. So if it was based on a popularity contest, I'd be the one that got shunned, right? I don't want that, so I'm not going to do that to another person. This seems extremely simple. But these echo chambers in gaming are like, we're standing up for what's right. But what are the first principles? If the first principle is comfort, if the first principle is power, if the first principle is might is right, okay, no problem. You're going to shun all the conservatives from gaming. Conservatives are going to shun all us, progressive liberals from everything else because they can. They got the power in the real world. If those are the rules, fine, those are the rules. Those are not the rules I want. Those aren't. I prefer inclusion. I prefer actual diversity, which means we don't ban and shun people for wrongthink, provided they leave those contentious opinions at the fucking door. Stick to games, right? If you're not going to put an actively pro-life message in your game, it's not relevant. Same as if you're not putting an actively pro-choice message in your game, then it's not relevant, right? When you do that as material, then it's fair game to discuss how the game handles it. Then again, all these people writing for these liberal gaming sites, they believe in death of the author. So it's just about how the game handles it. The personal opinions of the people who make the game aren't relevant if death of the author applies, right? It's cherry picking what methodology you use to get a predetermined outcome that you like instead of being consistent in principles. And that's the issue I have with it. And this is the reason I find myself in the unenviable position of saying, I disagree with Cawthon's views. I don't think morally people can just hide behind their religion to go, I'm pro-life and anti-trans. He never said he's anti-trans. He says he has love for his LGBTQ plus fans, but actions speak louder than words on that one. But it could be that he's just, I don't know what Tulsi Gabbard's position on abortion is, but you know what I mean? It could be he gave for other reasons and just didn't look into that element that much. But do I like his politics? No. Do I think he's being narrow-minded? Yes. Do I think a lot of people on the left in gaming are extremely narrow-minded too? Yes. Which is why I'm not willing to rule out anybody. I don't want to cut anybody. I want trans kids to be able to play sports. I want conservatives to be able to make video games. And I want really, really leftist, Marxist progressives to be able to write about video games. I want inclusion. I don't want this cherry-picked exclusivity where it's like, oh, open the gates today, don't close them now. Open the gates, close them. That's not inclusion. In order to really change minds, in order to move that Overton window into something that's more equitable and more inclusive, we have to let in people with whom we disagree so that we can persuade them. Because nobody was persuaded by a door slammed in their face. Not really. They may bow their heads and bend the knee, but you're not changing their mind. The reason gay marriage is now normalized, same-sex marriage is now normalized, is because it was a gradual getting people on board with it. And the getting people on board with it came before the legislation. Up here in Canada, it didn't. Up here in Canada, it was like 50-50 when they put it in. And people kind of freaked out. Same with trans inclusion. I remember that. Oh my God, Bill C-10. Oh, the pearl clutching down in the U.S. over that thing, completely misrepresented the whole thing. What the hell? Sky didn't fall. People weren't being hauled before the Human Rights Tribunal for simply accidentally misgendering somebody. It didn't happen. The US is a very different system. It needs to persuade. I would have preferred that things were handled very differently up here too, because of that shit where people still believe things that are just not true about the Canadian system. But I'm interested in actual change. I'm not interested in just virtue signaling or saying the right things, because I have boobs. I'm going to be somebody's villain no matter what, you know. I'm a mouthy woman, so a quarter of gaming hates me there. I've got boobs and aren't ashamed of it, so a quarter of gaming hates me there. I'm already at 50% loathe. And, you know, the reality is that video games are a hobby of misfits. There's a lot of people in positions of power that don't wield that power responsibly because they're still identifying as a misfit when in fact they're really a mean girl, a mean person of any gender. They're not recognizing you're not that kid in school being picked on anymore. You're now somebody with some power and authority, and you're behaving like a brat and a despot because you don't see it for what it is. And that's a problem. We're never going to get real diversity and inclusion with that disconnect happening. And I made a comment on Twitter this week that some people were kind of snarky about, but I stand by it. The fact that the marginalizing, the nerfing of femininity, meaning boobs, in games, at least in game trailers, is not really to appease a certain subset of women, because the Anita Sarkeesians of the world, they always find something, right? They never focus on what's good. Those changes are because of the comfort of certain guys with deeply misogynist views in gaming, in the left of gaming, who are made incredibly uncomfortable by a beautiful, dominant woman. And people are like, oh, blame the men, even though I said subset of men. I stand by this. If you look at the people who are all over things like E3 and this and that, it's not the usual suspects on the progressive left. It's a bunch of dudes and women looking very uncomfortable in short dresses that they look great in but don't look comfortable. It's those dudes that are really making the decisions about what's in and what's out. The don't like anything feminists, they can yell and they can scream, they can influence, but they're not the ones making those decisions. There just aren't enough women in decision-making positions in gaming. And, you know, the guys are too scared. Give me a break. The decision-making is, this side's going to yell at us, this side's going to yell at us. So they just end up making the choice that they would have made. They end up, because somebody's going to yell at them no matter what they do, they end up doing what they want to do. Because there's no way to come out without being yelled at. So it's like, boobs make us uncomfortable. This is not the larger world, right? The same way that in the larger world, it's trans kids in sports and critical race theory that are getting wiped off the face of the planet, as opposed to boobs in games. Well-adjusted, straight, bisexual, and even some gay men like boobs. They're not afraid of boobs. They don't want to see boobs go away. And a lot of straight women have no problem with tits, okay? Gay women obviously like tits, right? But, you know, most women above the age of like 19 have gotten past that nobody's gonna like me unless I'm absolutely perfect phase. And since a lot of these games are M for mature, meaning you're not supposed to be playing them until you're at least 18 anyway, who's it harming? Really no one. Have some boobs in games. Can we please have the booth babes and the desire demons and all that stuff back? Because that's the last time I remember gaming really being fun. Individual games are super fun. You guys know that. But, you know what I mean. All right. If you like this sort of commentary, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. I'm going to try to get some rest over the weekend. Who am I kidding? Thanks for watching.